How is everybody doing? You all have been enjoying these daily live streams, and they're getting more and more important every day as Trump continues to escalate his attacks on the media, as Trump continues to escalate his quelling of any sort of dissent. And what we're seeing is getting increasingly dangerous because it's almost like the frog boiling in the pot of water. It's an analogy, it's not real, but it's an analogy that basically says, if you have a frog and you throw him in a pot of boiling water, he'll react and jump away. But if you place him in a pot of water at room temperature and slowly boil the water, he won't notice. It's an analogy about people slowly losing their democratic norms and not realizing it until it's too late. So what we want to do is break down exactly what's happening, make sure we're on top of the news every single day. Trump, again, is escalating his attacks on the media, and we're doing these streams every single day now. So if you missed this one live and you're watching it after the fact, make sure you're subscribed with post notifications on so you don't fall behind. You can still drop a like and drop a blue heart to help get this out there, because the more people see this, the harder it becomes to, gaslight the country and have nobody even talk about it. We will be talking about it relentlessly. So I want to jump in with what happened about less than 24 hours ago. Last night, a CNN journalist was detained live on air as the LAPD began to escalate. Let's check this out.
Well, I'm outside the perimeter, Laura. Again, I think you heard John Miller explain it, and I think he explained it best. As I was walking over to the officer, tried to explain who I was, identified who I was with. He said, I'd like you to turn around. I turned around, I had my hands behind my back. They did not put me in zip ties, but they did grab both of my hands as I was escorted over to the side. They said, you are being detained while we lead you out of this area. You are not allowed to be in this area. So they took me over to the side. They took down my name. They asked me where I was from. They get your basic information. And
there's an important distinction that I want to make that I've been thinking about lately. Now, I've talked relentlessly about the chilling effect on this channel, right? The idea that you can publicly intimidate people and you can get journalists to almost self-censor through fear if you do relentless lawsuits. If you sue ABC one too many times, ABC News starts to preemptively bend the knee because they're scared of getting sued, right? You're creating an overall chilling effect. And I want to expand on this a little bit further when it comes to attacks on the media. And just bear with me for a second. Let me find. So there's two forms of attacks that I want to make a distinction between. Authoritarianism via a suit and authoritarianism via a uniform. When it comes to uniforms, we can look at Australian reporter Lauren Tomasi, who was shot in the back of the leg with a rubber bullet by an LAPD officer who you can see on camera intentionally aiming at her. A despicable human being who decides to use a disproportionate amount of force on a journalist with her back turned. Okay, that is intimidation. That is authoritarianism through a uniform, right? Mobilizing the Marines and the National Guard. But there's also a more insidious form of authoritarianism that we can talk about, which is authoritarianism in a suit, behind the scenes, through lawsuits and through suits and ties. For example, ABC News just fired journalist Terry Moran just today. They fired journalist Terry Moran simply because he spoke out against the Trump administration. But to continue with this clip right here of this journalist being arrested.
Flyers and posters saying
CNN?
It's time to escalate.
Wait 1 second, John. Hold on.
Yeah,
I want to. Jason,
Yep.
What's going on? I hear you. Am I seeing Jason Carroll being? What happened, Jason?
I am being detained. I'm being detained, Laura. I'm not being arrested. Correct, officers?
Did you hear what he told you?
No.
We're letting you go, but you can't come back.
Okay.
Because then if you come back, then you go. We're good right here.
Okay.
Okay, please?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, officer.
Take care. You too. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
What happened, Jason?
If you guys can still hear me, what happened was, yes.
I'm Chris with the New York Times. We got video of you guys.
Oh, you did.
If you need it later,
thank you.
call New York Times.
I appreciate that.
I can hear you still, Jason. What's happening?
So here's what happened, Laura. The officer, I was called over, and the officer told me to put my hands behind my back. I said, am I being arrested? He said, you were being detained. I was walked out of the area.
Okay, just to build on what I was saying, there's a distinction between intimidating people through a show of force and through LAPD or Marines, and then also intimidating people through the courts. Someone in chat said, did they truly fire Terry Moran? Yes. A few days ago, ABC News suspended journalist Terry Moran, but they've officially let Terry Moran go. They're not renewing his contract simply because he made a post about Stephen Miller. Have you guys seen the original Stephen Miller post that Terry Moran made? Because I want to walk you all through the timeline and show you the distinction between intimidation through Marines and suits. Then we'll talk a little bit more about the escalating situation in New York, which is actually now de-escalating, but Trump continues to try to escalate it through random clips. He still thinks that insurrectionists are taking over all of LA. Donald Trump literally said today that it would have been on the same level as the wildfires that happened recently if he didn't mobilize the National Guard. What is he talking about? So let's start here. Yashar Ali said a few days ago, this was about 2 days ago, this morning, ABC News has suspended Terry Moran for a now deleted tweet. And honestly, this tweet is one of the best things that I've read. This tweet is incredibly true. He says, the thing about Stephen Miller is not that he is the brains behind Trumpism. Yes, he is one of the people who conceptualizes the impulses of the Trumpist movement and translates them into policy, but it's not that. And Stephen Miller is one of Trump's top policy advisors. This is him. You've seen the bald guy, Stephen Miller. To continue, it says, the thing about Stephen Miller is not that he's the brains behind Trumpism. Yes, he is one of the people who conceptualizes the impulses of the Trumpist movement and translates them into policy, but that's not what's interesting about Miller. It's not brains, it's bile. Miller is a man who is richly endowed with the capacity for hatred. He's a world-class hater. You can see this just by looking at him, because you can see that his hatreds are his spiritual nourishment. He eats his hate. Trump is a world-class hater, but his hatred is only a means to an end, and that end is his own glorification. That is his spiritual nourishment. And what you can see, essentially, is that Terry Moran is drawing a distinction between Donald Trump hating and using hate as a vehicle for his own glorification. Meanwhile, Stephen Miller genuinely loves hate. The end goal for Stephen Miller is to just hate. The end goal for Donald Trump is to secure some sort of legacy in his mind that he thinks he has. But what I want to point out here is that after this happened, every single Trump administration official, or at least a lot of the important ones, in a coordinated and top-down manner, began to attack Terry Moran and say he needs to be fired. Caroline Levitt, for example, said, last night in a since-deleted post, so-called journalist Terry Moran went on a rampage against Stephen Miller and called President Trump a world-class hater. This is unhinged and unacceptable. The gaslighting here is wild. You're going to say that somebody else is acting too unhinged on social media when you represent the dude who I guarantee we can just pull up his Truth Social and it's going to be something incredibly unhinged just by scrolling down. Okay, it looks like he hasn't had... Okay, 8 hours ago, he said, whoa. If I didn't send in the troops to Los Angeles the last 3 nights, that once beautiful and great city would be burning to the ground right now, much like those 25,000 houses burned to the ground in LA. What? Okay. The reason I got sidetracked there is because Caroline Levitt was saying that Terry Moran was acting unhinged and unacceptable, and it took me 1 second to find a post 8 hours ago of Trump saying that he basically prevented the LA wildfires part 2 because they were small demonstrations. The demonstrations weren't even small, but any demonstrations that had violence were small. Terry Moran is spot on for his analysis. Yep. Buzz says, journalists are to be held accountable for free speech now. It's basically, here's the thing. ABC can have whatever policy ABC wants, but it's concerning when you see Trump continue to sue multiple media orgs like ABC, like Paramount, the parent company of 60 Minutes, and each media org bends the knee. Either they don't want to go because they don't want to go to discovery and trial, or because they don't want the Trump administration to be, coming down on them in a disproportionate way. For some reason, they bend the knee. Now, the concerning part is when Caroline Leavitt can send out a tweet and a journalist is now fired, essentially, just because Caroline Leavitt deems this unhinged and unacceptable. Who is Caroline Leavitt to say what is unhinged and unacceptable? That is my question. And then J.D. Vance said, ABC journalist Terry Moran posted this absolutely vile smear of Stephen Miller. It's dripping with hatred. Really? The gaslighting is wild. This is like when Trump says the people protesting in LA are insurrectionists, but the people who protested on January 6th are great patriots. Not even protested, they rioted. He says, as it happens, I know Stephen quite well. Mama Gail, thank you more than you know. Shout out Mama Gail. Drop some blue hearts in chat. Now, after Terry Moran was fired, Midas Touch then begins to say, hey, Terry Moran, we have an opening for you.
Let me make this direct message to Terry Moran and zoom in on me for a second, if you will, Jeremy. Terry Moran, if you are listening and if you are watching this right now, we've just learned that your agreement has apparently been terminated by ABC. We want to let you know that you will always have a place here at the Midas Touch Network. I want to give you an example of what Katie Fang has been able to build when she became part of the Midas Touch Network, built out her independent media network. It has over 200,000 subscribers, and basically 1 week her YouTube channel. We are getting substantially more views here on the Midas Touch Network.
Good stuff right there. A very, very, very solid right there. Now, to continue, this journalist. Now, let's go back. Let's switch back. We have a lot of new people that just joined, so I'm going to repeat myself. I'm trying to draw a distinction between Trump's subtle authoritarianism via show of force or via uniforms, like mobilizing the Marines and the National Guard when it's absolutely not needed against the will of Governor Gavin Newsom. I'm trying to draw a distinction between that and a show of force via, like lawsuits behind the scenes. So we were just talking about Terry Moran being suspended due to lawsuits and shit, but check out this.
Okay.
I need you guys to go over there.
So you can see, Jake, it's a little chaotic. So what they're trying to do is...
This is like me getting yelled at by my high school principal.
Okay.
I need you guys to go over there.
So you can see, Jake, it's a little chaotic. So what they're trying to do is...
You guys gotta keep walking.
We're going to keep walking. We're going to keep walking. And then
You guys are missing what I'm saying. Someone said, why are you calling Trump's authoritarianism subtle? I'm saying I'm drawing a distinction between the subtle authoritarianism that most people miss via lawsuits behind the scenes and the unsubtle authoritarianism that you see when people are in uniforms on the streets. There's a distinction between these two, and they're both equally as important. When journalists are shot in the back of the leg with rubber bullets, that is not very subtle. But when ABC News is repeatedly sued, and most Americans don't even know about that, they don't even know about these lawsuits, that is a subtle form of authoritarianism that is equally as important, but almost more insidious because it's easy to miss. But to continue with this.
I want you to take a look over here. These are the officers in Suburbans, and then we're trying to weave our way through the next wave of officers. But you can see, there's press parked on the sidewalk because when today started, this area into the Metropolitan Detention Center was completely open. I hear you. I hear you. And so...
Don't turn your back to them, ma'am. They're going to shoot you in the back of the leg. Don't turn your back.
This is how a street is cleared. The LAPD is creating a line to try to make the people who are protesting and demonstrating, watch out, come this way. I think we're okay here. Yeah?
Please, I need you to move, please.
Are you moving all these as well? Okay. All right, we're going to keep moving.
Why are they such assholes?
So, the issue has been...
Man, CNN is not having a good time covering these LA protests. Again, one of their journalists got arrested last night. We have this clip right here. Really quickly, let's read some of the chats. Someone said, as a vet, I'm absolutely sickened that Bone Spurs is single-handedly trying to piss away all the goodwill it took. It took years to build up between the public and the military. I absolutely agree, Dixon. Thank you for your service and thank you for the donation. Yeah, dude. And on top of that, Trump gave a speech today at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. And Lord have mercy, it was embarrassing. He mixed up World War I and World War II. He said the Confederate states were like more patriotic. He was saying we need to return the bases to their Confederate names rather than the names of more contemporary war heroes. But to return to this concept of, you know, public intimidation, we did see the CNN journalist get arrested roughly 24 hours ago. And this is a really good example of the normalization of media intimidation as a tool of governance. One more time, if you can normalize the media being intimidated through the courts and on the streets, then it's like, yeah, then we're cooked. But we're not normalizing it, I do want to say. When we sit here and we cover this relentlessly, I feel like that's the opposite of normalizing it. If we can continue to show a spotlight on this. Will said, while you still have a country to defend, you all need to be peacefully protesting now, create your networks now, find your people now, stand up now. Yep, if anybody is in Chicago or any other state, all 50 states, on the 14th, there is the No Kings protest. I'll be out protesting in Chicago because I actually go out and I always make sure that while I make content, I'm also doing the other Democratic channels. So, for example, when Biden was still the candidate, I did a lot of door knocking for Biden as the candidate. Now, I tried to do some for Kamala as the candidate, but the media stuff started to pick up around then. Then afterwards, I would do phone banking. Now we're going to do protests. We are going to live stream the protest. I was on the ground at the State of the Union, on the ground at Trump rallies. So, yo, whatever state y'all are in, what state are you in? Let me know in the comment section if you're going to the No Kings March. It's called No Kings because we don't want any kings. But let's check out this clip. Sorry, let's continue here.
Flyers and
let me know what state you're in. And by the way, make sure you drop a like on this live stream below. And if you don't want to miss a live stream, turn on post notifications because, yeah, they're usually fun.
flyers and posters saying
CNN?
it's time to escalate.
Wait 1 second,
it's
John.
time to-
Hold on.
Yeah,
I want
go
to.
ahead.
Jason,
Yep.
what's going on? I hear you. Am I seeing Jason Carroll being? What happened, Jason?
I am being detained. I am being detained, Laura. I'm not being arrested. Correct, officers?
Did you hear what he told you?
No.
We're letting you go, but you can't come back.
Okay.
Because then if you come back, then you go. We're good right here.
Okay.
Okay, please?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so really quickly, I see protesting here in California, in Pennsylvania, in Mexico State. Nevada says Illinois. That's interesting. Nevada, we got a lot of Nevadas. We got a lot of Californias here. Retired RN says Florida. Las Vegas, Nevada. Maryland. Denver, No Kings protest. I'll be at the No Kings protest in Chicago. One more time, drop a like on the stream. Can we get to 4,000? But this is Jason Carroll being arrested here.
Thank you, officer.
Take care. You too. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
What happened, Jason?
If you guys can still hear me, what happened was, yes.
I'm Chris with the New York Times. We got video of you guys.
Oh, you did?
If you need it later,
Thank you.
call New York Times.
I appreciate that.
I can hear you still, Jason.
Oh, my bad. Did I say arrested? I meant detained. Love your content. The left needs more sane people. I appreciate that, pleb. And Honeybee. Yeah, he was detained, not arrested. Sorry.
What's happening?
So here's what happened, Laura. The officer, I was called over, and the officer told me to put my hands behind my back. I said, am I being arrested? He said, you were being detained. I was walked out of the area. They took down my information.
Oh, I'm losing his IFB right now. I can't hear you, Jason. John Miller.
And again, I want to draw the distinction between this show of force and ABC News' Terry Moran being fired today, which is the breaking news. Terry Moran was just fired. ABC News will not renew the contract of veteran correspondent Terry Moran. What did he do to get detained? Beats me. You have to actually do something to get detained in America, in Trump's America? I didn't know that. I thought you can just detain people for whatever in Trump's America.
Well, I'm outside.
Oh, this is what he did. He was being a journalist.
At the perimeter, Laura. Again, I think you heard John Miller explain it, and I think he explained it best. You know, as I was walking over to the officer, tried to explain who I was, identified who I was with. I turned. He said, "I'd like you to turn around." I turned around. I had my hands behind my back. They did not put me in zip ties, but they did grab both of my hands as I was escorted over to the side. They said, "You are being detained while we lead you out of this area. You are not allowed to be in this area." So they took me over to the side. They took down my name. They asked me where I was from. You know, they get your basic information. And I said, "Am I being arrested?" He said, "No, you're not being arrested. You're being detained." And so there's that. As press, you know, these are some of the things that you take a lot of risks as press. This is low on that sort of scale of risks, but it
very, very interesting. Yeah, one more time, the No Kings protest, June 14th. We have 12,000 people watching, so if we can use this platform to promote the fact that there are going to be protests in all 50 states, look up No Kings, followed by the state that you're in, and then I'll be there in Chicago, live streaming. Come say hi in a respectful way, of course. I also do want to talk about this story very quickly. One second, this is a very, very interesting one. All right, we have some breaking news. Donald Trump was just caught in yet another lie. It is another prime example of Trump's ongoing, I would say pathological lying, but that is almost downplaying it. He carpet bombs the public, you know, he basically carpet bombs the public discourse with relentless lies on a daily basis. And now California Governor Gavin Newsom just called him out for those lies. Right now. Literally, Gavin Newsom just called him out and said, this isn't true. This clip is from a few days ago, but Trump is claiming he called Governor Gavin Newsom for about 20 minutes, and he's saying he told Governor Newsom, hey, you're being reckless. You're not handling your state's problems well, yet that was a complete lie. Let's start with Governor Newsom talking and saying that Trump is a stone-cold liar a few days back.
Put out another Truth Social telling you and the mayor to apologize to the people of Los Angeles. You guys go at it pretty hard publicly, but I know you talk privately. Have you spoken in the last couple of days to the president about any of this?
Yeah, we talked for almost 20 minutes, and this issue never came up. I mean, I kept trying to talk about L.A. He wanted to talk about all these other issues. We had a very decent conversation.
When was this?
This was late Friday night. I think about 1:30 plus his time.
After the protest had started?
After the protest, and he never once brought up the National Guard. He's a stone-cold liar. He said he did. Stone-cold liar. Never did. It was a very civil conversation. I've always wanted to approach engagement with the President of the United States in a respectful and responsible way. But there's no working with the President. There's only working for him. And I will never work for Donald Trump.
Did you...
Very well said from Governor Gavin Newsom, who's been really taking a stand lately. I also want to say, Midas Touch then points out, MAGA influencers are now in full force defending Trump having no idea what day it is. Because this is Governor Gavin Newsom saying that they talked on Friday. But Trump is saying they talked on Sunday or Monday, and he spent the whole call admonishing Governor Gavin Newsom. So Midas Touch rightfully points out, MAGA influencers are now in full force defending Trump having no idea what day it is. This man is increasingly diminished, and Governor Gavin Newsom responds by saying there was no call, not even a voicemail. Americans should be alarmed that a president deploying Marines onto our streets doesn't even know who he's talking to. And the main headline of the story that I find absolutely hilarious is the fact that Fox News was then forced to report on Donald Trump's mistake. Please watch this clip.
On his way to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where he'll be in just a little while. He said the first call to Gavin Newsom was not picked up. The second call Gavin picked up. We spoke for 16 minutes. I told him to essentially, quote, and this is quoting the president, get his ass in gear and stop the riots, which were out of control more than anything else. This shows what a liar he is. Said I never called. So here is the evidence. And here is the call log that the president sent me from his phone. This was June the 7th. Now, granted, this was on Saturday. But look, there's 1:22 o'clock in the morning.
They said, granted, this was on Saturday, but it was actually really late on June 6th. You could argue Trump doesn't know what day it is, and Fox News is being forced to admit this. Look at this. Like, listen closely.
June the 7th. Now, granted, this was on Saturday. But look, there's 1:22 o'clock in the morning, which would have been 10 o'clock at night, 10:22 at night, California time. There was an outgoing call for 4 seconds, and then there was an outgoing call for 16 minutes. So that from the president, which says is proof that he spoke to Gavin Newsom early in the morning, our time, late at night, Friday night, would have been June 6th, I guess, in Los Angeles. So, Governor, over to you for the response.
I was going to say that's next, right? We're waiting to see what if Governor Newsom has a response to the president's. Essentially, what he has there is the receipt for what he says is the call that was made.
That is not the receipt whatsoever. Does everyone have collective dementia at this point? Donald Trump doesn't seem to know what day it is. He's lying about not only the contents of the call, but if the call even happened. Fox News then begins to gaslight us. Let me show you the original clip of Donald Trump talking about this, and this is where Gavin Newsom responded. There was no call, not even a voicemail. Americans should be alarmed that a president deploying Marines onto our streets doesn't even know who he's talking to on what day.
When is the last time you spoke with Governor Newsom?
A day ago. Called him up to tell him, got to do a better job. He's doing a bad job, causing a lot of death and a lot of potential death. If we didn't send out the National Guard, and last time we gave him a little additional help, you would have, Los Angeles would be burning right now. Los Angeles would be not a lot different than what you saw take place in California and Los Angeles.
Okay, I'm sorry, but that in and of itself is such a deranged effing lie. Trump keeps making this claim that California would be worse than the wildfires if he didn't quell these peaceful protests where like one person lit a Waymo on fire, and we all say that's bad. He said this, if I didn't, quote, send in the troops to Los Angeles the last 3 nights, that once beautiful and great city would be burning to the ground right now. Why does he put things in quotes like that? If I didn't, quote, send in the troops. But then he continues, that once beautiful and great city would be burning to the ground, much like the 25,000 houses burned to the ground in LA due to an incompetent governor and mayor. Incidentally, the much more difficult, time-consuming, and stringent federal permitting process is virtually complete on these houses, while the easy and simple city and state permits are disastrously bungled. This dude's tweeting style is incredibly unhinged and manic. He posts article after article. It's like a propaganda platform. Thomas, thank you for the donation. He said, you stopped deporting Abuelita, sorry. There wouldn't be a revolt. True. Stop deporting grandmas and kids too. Kids with cancer. Please stop deporting kids with cancer. There wouldn't be a revolt. But to continue, Governor Gavin Newsom also just reposted John Favreau, who says, Newsom's position is that ICE officers should be able to carry out enforcement operations. Law enforcement should be able to handle unruly protests, and the rest of us should be free to live in a city that isn't heavily militarized for no reason. Stephen's position is that we should see the U.S. military and use the U.S. military to arrest and detain anyone he suspects may be undocumented, even if they're not. And it's even worse than that. He's using not only the military, but ICE to go after people who are already following the laws and trying to go through the proper court processes. There's story after story of people being 1 or 2 weeks away from getting their citizenship, or at least having a court hearing, and they're going through it, trying to do the proper processes, and they still get deported. They still get targeted, which is like, what's the point in following the law if following the law has the same end result in breaking the law? You're not creating a good incentive structure. But Stephen Miller doesn't care. They only care about being authoritarian and mobilizing not only the National Guard, mobilizing then the Marines a day after, and now they continue to just gaslight the public. Stephen Miller is trying to say that Newsom's position is that if ICE officers don't want to get assaulted, or worse, by insurrectionist migrant mobs, they must withdraw from the state. What do you mean insurrectionist migrant mobs? I don't want to hear the word insurrectionist come out of the mouth of anybody in this administration. I don't want to rehash the whole January 6th thing, but Trump in a top-down way made sure that everyone that supported him thought the election was rigged. In the months leading up to the election, he claimed it's going to be rigged. It's going to be rigged. On election night, he declares victory prematurely. He uses that as a pretext to file 60 lawsuits, loses every lawsuit. Trump loses every single effing lawsuit. And then he claims that the election was stolen and that we need to protest at the Capitol. Not we, but his supporters. They go to the Capitol, and we know what happened from there. But Governor Gavin Newsom is doing a great job of holding the line against Donald Trump, and I want to see him continue to do that. To continue on to the next story, Donald Trump continued to speak at Fort Bragg. I won't play all of the clips, but here's him talking about Governor Newsom.
You don't have to take this if you don't want. You could be great patriots, say, I don't want to raise. I will not accept it. Let it go back into our country. Let's give it to Gavin Newsom so he can waste it in Los Angeles. No, we don't want to do that, but we're giving you you don't have to take this if you don't want. You could be great patriots, say, I don't want to raise. I will not accept it.
This man, I can't even believe this man.
This is blonde Berlusconi. You know what I mean? Like this is.
Here's Rachel Maddow on the Katie Fang Show.
Inarticulate Viktor Orban, right? Like these guys are all the same. The authoritarian playbook is the same everywhere. They all do the same stuff. And so I feel like, covering Trump's every utterance, and every new outrage and attempt to arrogate power to himself that the Constitution doesn't give him and all this stuff. Like, I understand we need to cover that. And I feel like that's well covered in the news and that's great, but that's like the Washington story. And then the defining story of our time is not going to be that we've got now in our country, one of these would-be dictators like so many other countries have had to contend with. The defining story of our time will be whether or not the American people stop it, whether or not the American people allow our country to become a dictatorship and to have our Constitution overthrown and to get rid of elections and have a permanent semi-monarchy or whatever it is that they want.
Trump is currently now speaking in front of Joint Base Andrews. Let's see what he has to say. Trump on his phone call with Newsom. Let's see. There is now an update to this story. To build on top of the story I was just talking about, Trump just spoke about the phone call with Gavin Newsom that he lied about. He was just confronted. Let's hear what he has to say in this moment.
Governor Newsom did not speak to you a day ago, as you said, in the Oval Office earlier. What's your response?
Well, I gave him, it wasn't a day ago, it was a little longer than that, and I presented the phone conversation to Fox News, John Roberts and Molly Line at Fox News, because they were the ones that said it. And we actually spent 16-point-something minutes on the phone, and I told him he's got to get his act together because you're going to have some bad times in Los Angeles if he doesn't. We had a pleasant conversation.
The proof was from the phone company. It was from the phone company. So I spoke to him at a certain time. I'm sure you all saw it. You saw it. You saw. But why would you ask me that question if you saw it? You know, I mean, he asked me a question, and then he says, "Yeah, I saw that you spoke to him." Yeah, I spoke to him for over 16 minutes.
What is this dribble? If we go back to the story that we were just talking about, the lie is the day that the phone call happened. He very, very clearly lied about the day that the phone call happened. Even MAGA influencers are now claiming that Trump dropped the receipts. But the receipts show that the call happened early in the morning on June 7th, multiple days ago. Trump doesn't even know what day it is, and this dude is deploying the Marines and the National Guard. But listen to this drivel.
I spoke to him for over 16 minutes, and I told him to get his act together, but he hasn't been able to do that.
I would actually bet money that this is not what Trump said to Governor Newsom. I could bet money.
I mean, the man, really, we could have a great, you know, we have an Olympics coming up. We have to put the right foot forward. We have to do a job. We have a lot of people all over the world watching Los Angeles. We've got the Olympics, and we have this guy allowing this to happen. Let me tell you,
what is he allowing to happen? You know, I was arguing with one of my Trump supporter friends yesterday after Trump called for the arrest of Newsom, and I said, this is unprecedented. This has never happened before. And he was saying, what's unprecedented about it? Governors have been arrested before. An Illinois governor was arrested under Obama. And I said, that's not what I'm talking about. The unprecedented piece is the fact that the President of the United States is currently calling for the arrest of a governor with zero grounds or law broken or anything. That's different than the FBI doing an investigation and finding corruption against an Illinois governor, which they've done repeatedly. Thank you for the gifted memberships. Let me check out some of the chat. By the way, guys, if you appreciate the daily live streams, we've been doing these every day because the news kind of keeps getting more and more important. Trump continues to escalate his attacks on the media, both through lawsuits and on the streets. And what we're seeing is escalating quicker than most people realize. So we are breaking it down daily, breaking down his rhetoric, his strategy, his lack of strategy. So these daily streams are helping to make sure that the country isn't gaslit by the Trump admin saying, the media sucks, the media is lying to you. So the more people that see this, the better. If you could drop a like, drop some blue hearts. Let's see if we can get 8,000 likes on the stream. That would be a huge, huge win. And one more time, I just want to say, there are no King protests coming up. Somebody in chat said, you are just too young. This has always been happening. It's just a show. No, you can't just chalk this up to my youth or my naivete. This is unique. The President of the United States calling for the arrest of a governor, number one, is unique. The President of the United States calling for the arrest of a governor with no evidence is unhinged. And the President sitting there saying that, hey, this would be worse than the forest fires is also unhinged. None of this, you know, it is for show. You're right about that. But the idea that this has happened many times before, in my opinion, just downplays an otherwise important situation. I do think Governor Newsom has been, you know, I've been a fan of Governor Newsom. He's solid. But him stepping up lately has made him one of my favorites as a contender for 2028. I don't know how good his chances would be, but I mean, this dude can take the fight to Republicans. And that's what we need. Wow, we just got this breaking news story really quickly. This is what people have feared. ICE impersonator zip-tied woman and stole $1,000. Oh my God. Quote, this is what people have feared. That was how American Immigration Counselor Senior Fellow Aaron Reichlin-Melnick responded on social media Monday to reporting that a man impersonating U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement zip-tied a woman working as a cashier at a cash-only shop and then stole around $1,000 from her. Governor Newsom then began to absolutely destroyed Trump on two fronts. There are two unique lines of attack that he's using that I like. Number one, he's pointing out how the National Guard, the troops that Trump sent, are sitting there unused, just laying on the ground with zero orders. But on top of that, he is pointing out how it's a waste of money. It's over $100 million. I believe the final figure, or the beginning figure, was $134 million that will be extended and increased as the days go on, but $100 million. Trump's National Guard troops are sitting unused without orders after being deployed for LA protests. And, you know, very, very quickly, if you missed these live streams from the beginning, like if you're watching this after the fact or you came in late, make sure you have post notifications on, because I think as the Trump administration continues to escalate, we can build one of the biggest, fastest, strongest live stream communities where we're there first. We're talking about these issues together. I see a lot of you guys. I see a lot of the same faces, and I love it. I love the community building aspect. But this says, hundreds of National Guard troops have been deployed to Los Angeles, and Governor Newsom is now saying, check this out. I was just informed Trump is deploying another 2,000. The first 2,000 given no food or water. Only approximately 300 are deployed. The rest are sitting there, unused, in federal buildings without orders. I'd like to watch this clip from Fox News.
I want to remind everyone tonight, if Democrats had their way, they would let all of this continue. They wouldn't intervene on the 101, which if you know LA at all, if the 101 is blocked, the whole city is strangled.
Yeah, you shouldn't block the 101, but you also shouldn't mobilize the National Guard in an escalatory way when these are the best protests you can have on screen. Think about this. Fox News is relentlessly trying to cherry pick the worst footage possible. Right now, while Laura Ingram's speaking, the worst footage they could find is an incredibly peaceful crowd of people holding flags, right? So the reason why people were flooding the highway, the 101, I actually think that there are better ways than disrupting people who would otherwise be on your side from going to work. Like, for example, someone I know missed a work trip because there were protesters at O'Hare Airport blocking the strip. I live in Chicago, blocking the O'Hare Airport, not the strip, but the highway. If you guys remember this person missed an incredibly, incredibly important meeting, and he's on their side too. He just said it's counterproductive, and I understand why that could be counterproductive. I also understand why they're doing it, because the Trump administration has been escalating.
I want to remind everyone tonight, if Democrats had their way, they would let all of this continue. They wouldn't
Protests? Yeah. I would allow protests to continue. Yeah, don't shut down the 101, but
intervene on the 101, which if you know LA at all, if the 101 is blocked, the whole city is strangled.
Adam, you sound like you don't understand what a protest is for. You don't understand what a protest is for. A protest is for winning the minds of people and getting them over on your issue. If you're protesting and you're losing people actively, then that's not efficient whatsoever. What have some of the most productive protests been? What about the diner sit-ins during the civil rights era? Were the diner sit-ins made to get people on their side? Yes. That's different than pausing a protest. You want people to get on your side. Like, I feel like you're the same person that would see a bunch of cars being on fire in the road and you would say this is exactly what protesting is for, which I would argue that only emboldens the Trump administration using this. See, you want to know why this is bad. You don't want your protests to end up on Fox News, like.
And the surrounding parts of the city, of the main city, of the downtown, LA County, the ripple effects across the region. I can't overstate it enough as someone who's lived in.
They're already on the other side. No, I'd say that the point of these protests is to bring mass awareness to not only the unjust deportations and ICE raids, but mass awareness to the lack of due process and just the cruelty of these. Someone in chat's asking if the point of these protests is even to win over minds. Yeah, I would argue at the end of the day, you should be trying to win over minds with these protests. It's very short-sighted to be screaming people down or like gluing your hands to the O'Hare Airport highway and stopping families from, you're just losing people at that point. I'm sorry, but you have to effectively protest. To continue.
You can't defend when people start setting things on fire, or they start damaging buildings, or going after members of law enforcement. That's not free speech. That is not peaceful protests.
AOC then responded to John Fetterman.
If Senator Fetterman or anybody else is concerned with law and order, we should be looking at one of the most law-breaking agencies and administrations that we've seen in the United States.
I think she's referring to...
Yep, I agree with her as well. But what Governor Newsom keeps saying, and don't just take it from me, take it from Newsom, take it from all of the leaders in the party, they're saying, hey, get out there, protest, but do it peacefully. Even Bernie Sanders said that. Don't take it from me. Let's take it from Bernie Sanders, who had a really good take. This is somebody who was protesting during the civil rights era. Good old Bernie Sanders. I do love him. Okay, first of all, let's read this. We all like to enjoy a nice birthday party, says Bernie, but most of us don't celebrate with a $45 million taxpayer-funded military parade. Save taxpayer money, have a birthday cake, and blow out a few candles. Bernie Sanders then tweets out, Dr. King defeated racist government officials and ended segregation through disciplined, non-violent resistance. Defeating Trumpism, oligarchy, and authoritarianism requires that same level of discipline, says Bernie Sanders, who I would argue is one of the strongest advocates for equality, one of the more, activist Democrats, as opposed to some of the more centrists. And he says, defeating a racist government or government overreach requires disciplined, nonviolent protest. People in chat are missing the point. Someone said, and yeah, that got him killed, but it also achieved his goals as well. Violent protests are counterproductive and play right into Trump's playbook. It's insane that people are arguing for more violence on the street in the chat, or saying that that will actually hurt Trump. Now, the thing is, the violence on the street, as AOC said, is coming from the ICE agents, and we should keep it that way, because then the clips that are coming out are that, you know how much Fox News is salivating to cover, any sort of insane things, but if they can only cover that. Exactly, the protest isn't violent, the police is, yeah, but we're just saying that minimizing the violence is overall a good thing for pro-democracy protests. Right here, we have a new group of protesters marching on LA.
Well, thanks for having me. First and foremost, watching these scenes, I just want to remind the general public that anyone who goes out and is protesting in a way that is not peaceful, law enforcement that is
I'm still
state
with you. I will
and
stay
local
dialed in.
and regional law enforcement will hold people accountable. But as far as the court case goes, this is a case that is going to make its way through the system. The preliminary injunction was not granted, but the judge did order a hearing for Thursday. So this is going to be heard on Thursday. Both sides will make their arguments, and the governor, the attorney general, the state of California feels very strongly that the calling of the National Guard. Well, thanks for having me.
I want to remind everyone.
Here's Laura Ingraham again. Here's Trump speaking earlier.
In many ways, it's tougher when they're not wearing a uniform because you don't know exactly who they are. In Los Angeles, the governor of California, the mayor of Los Angeles.
What are we doing here? What are we even doing here? One more time, since we have 10,000 people in the stream, anyone in chat going to the No Kings protests? Pro-democracy movements thrive around protesting and using the democratic channels at your disposal to have your voice heard. I will say, this chat right here, I think, is a prime example of a democratic channel in the most literal sense, like an actual YouTube channel, but also like a democratic way for our voices to be heard. We have Sedna is going. Nope said yep, ironically. Carrie MN is going. Ling Wei is going. Holly is going. Hell yeah. Ginny in North Carolina is going. That's pretty sick. Sweet. That's pretty awesome that we have such a mobilized crew. I will also be live streaming it. So if you're not going, don't worry. We'll be doing a pretty awesome live stream there to make sure that we're doing the pro-democracy, the full package. We're not just doing, live streams sitting at home. Trump threatens protesters who rain on his Military Day parade and said they'll be, quote, met with very big force. Lord have mercy. He's just using this as a pretext to rile people up and continue to escalate. President Donald Trump on Tuesday threatened to forcibly put down any protests that spoil the military parade he has ordered for his birthday on Saturday, to coincide with the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army's founding during the American Revolutionary War. Rick says, are you going? Yeah, as I was saying, I'll be at the No Kings protests in Chicago, and I'll be live streaming them on the ground, talking to both activists, talking to protesters, talking to the speakers and the organizers of the events. It's going to be really, really fun, and the Chicago one's going to be great. Speaking in the Oval Office following an impromptu event to discuss forest management ahead of the upcoming summer wildfire season, Trump was riffing on what he described as violent excesses by protesters, but the violent excesses haven't been demonstrable. One car being set on fire doesn't necessitate the National Guard and the Marine Corps being effing called in, which I can't believe I have to continue to repeat. But I want to loop back a little bit to what I was talking about at the very beginning of the live stream. We were trying to draw a distinction between force and a more... Okay, there's a distinction between authoritarianism that happens behind the scenes and in the shadows. And I would argue that that's the more subtle lawsuits that people miss. So the vast majority of Americans aren't paying attention to when, the Trump administration files a civil case against the parent company of ABC News. No one cares except for political nerds or people like us that are super engaged. People should care, but they don't. Now, the show of force that we're seeing is a more overt rather than covert way of being authoritarian, and that's why we have to continue to cover it relentlessly so they're not gaslighting the American people about the protests. Now, here's the thing. Here's the middle of the ground. Not even middle of the ground. There shouldn't be a middle of the ground, but here's what you always have to concede. Any violence that has no end goal and is just for the sake of violence will undermine the protest, and we should denounce that. If there is a group of 10,000 people peacefully protesting against ICE, and 10 people in that group decide to go off to the side and light a car on fire, please do not die on the hill defending those 10 people. Just describe the fact that most of the people there are peacefully protesting. In the same way that when Fox News airs a video of people looting a store during the protests, just say, that's bad. They are taking advantage of the protests and being agitators, but there are always people that take advantage of it. I'm sick of seeing people online, honestly, it's mainly on Blue Sky. Blue Sky is one where it's like, everyone's competing to see who can be the most virtuous. So everyone on Blue Sky is saying, you're basically no better than Trump if you're not okay with the violent protests, which blows my mind. Follow Bernie Sanders himself. Even Bernie Sanders is saying, yo, we can protest without losing goodwill with the public. I completely lost the Bernie Sanders post that I just had up, but Bernie Sanders was saying that exact same thing. He said Dr. King defeated racist government officials through disciplined, nonviolent resistance. Peaceful protest, please, good people. Yep. And another thing to point out is that violence is usually a last resort in authoritarian regimes that don't have any other way, any other means of people expressing themselves. So when the Buddhist dude lit himself on fire in Vietnam, you guys know that Burning Man photo that I'm referring to, it's a historical photo. That's because he was living under such oppressive conditions that he couldn't vote. There was no way to door knock or phone bank or mobilize. There was no way to broadcast your voice. So, as a final resort, he lit himself on fire. That is more understandable. But when you're in the United States, the idea of lighting a car on fire or lighting yourself on fire when there are so many better ways to have your voice heard, yeah. Yeah, Rage Against the Machine album cover, yeah. I agree, it is the last resort, but how many protesters are going to get roughed up? I mean, if you had to choose Fox News airing videos of protesters getting roughed up by the police, which is obviously effing awful, or Fox News selectively airing on repeat a video of a car burning, you'd want them to only have videos of protesters getting roughed up. Not want them to have that, but if we're going to be doing protests, we don't want to be, yeah. Really quickly, let's read some of the donations. By the way, I greatly appreciate everybody who opts on these live streams. I know I'm always saying that we're grinding with these daily live streams, but it really is like a community that is doing it. It's you guys that allow me to do this every single day. So I'm eternally grateful. And every second that you guys spend with me is great. Very quickly, Greg Stevens said, "The only sovereign to rule me is reason." Chant it. That's a good one. I like that. We have a lot of donations to catch up with. Thomas says, "It hasn't been unique. It's been gradual, systemic." I mean, yeah, this Gen Xer thinks you're a hope for the future. I appreciate that, Uncle Fatty. Thomas says, "Could you show Wyatt Russell confronting federal agents?" Is that the dude who was... Let me see if that's the video, I think. Yep, let me show this. Oh, wait, no, this isn't Wyatt Russell, though. We watched this video, but this is not Wyatt Russell.
Feel tough with your assault rifles and your sticks? You should be standing here with us. You're on the wrong side of history. We know you got a job to do, but you took an oath to the Constitution, not to the fascists in the White House. Think about what you're doing now. Think about what this means. Coming into our community. Peaceful fucking community. People working their jobs. They send in men in military fatigues, weapons of war, into our communities. And you stand here and you allow it. I am sick and tired of it. You should be sick and tired of it. You think any of these people in the White House sending you these commands give a fuck about you? Not one of them do. They laugh at you. Our president laughs at you. He calls you fools. He said the people who died overseas in the military were chumps. That's who you're defending right now. Every last...
Very, very well said. To continue, Martin quote, "A riot is the language of the unheard." I'm pretty sure the full quote actually, one second. Let me see. I'm pretty sure there's a full version of that quote. Let me see. Okay, let's read this full quote. Because someone in the donation said that I shouldn't be quoting Martin Luther King wrong, but no, let's read the full quote if you want to quote him. Because he was condemning riots in this context. And then he said, "But it is not enough for me to stand before you tonight and condemn riots. It would be morally irresponsible for me to do that without at the same time condemning the contingent, intolerable conditions that exist in our society. These conditions are the things that cause individuals to feel that they have no other alternative than to engage in violent rebellions to get attentions. And I must say tonight that a riot is a language of the unheard." So thank you for your donation, Brenda, but when you're saying, please stop using King to justify nonviolence, you don't understand King's whole philosophy. You're misquoting him yourself. When we pull up this full quote, we find that you're the one who completely is misquoting Martin Luther King, and you're using Martin Luther King's philosophy to justify violence when that was the antithesis of what he stood for, no? He is saying right here in the first line, "It is not enough for me to stand before you tonight and condemn riots," and then he essentially says, we have to understand why these riots happen. So in the process of you accusing me of misquoting Martin Luther King, you're justifying violence by kind of misquoting Martin Luther King, which is kind of what MAGA does. They take tiny little quotes and they try to blow it out of proportion. Someone said, "Thank you, GT. Thank you, Cray Cray, for the donation. Thank you, Elizabeth." GT says, "As a black American, don't twist our protests to support your agenda. Those supports weren't about winning hearts." Martin Luther King, we can do a research stream about this, I will say. Let's do a research stream. But if your end result right there is that we should be more violent, MLK would not agree. Someone says, you only say that because police aren't trampling you right now. You would try to defend yourself. You're completely missing my point. We're not talking about defending yourself from police. We're talking about we're talking about a protest of 10,000 people and 10 or 20 people decide to cause violence. My whole point is, you should not be defending those 10 or 20 people who are causing violence on the side. You should be pointing out that the vast majority of people are peaceful. And when I say this, people in chat are saying that I'm basically... Wait, someone says, you are fundamentally misunderstanding the King quote. Oh, then link me the full quote. Here, let's find the full entire quote if you're going to say that I'm misunderstanding. Oh, let's find the full speech then. Because people keep saying that I'm misquoting it, but we have people in chat essentially claiming that Martin Luther King was advocating for violence, and they're using quotes that are now misquotes of Martin Luther King. Yep. The context of the speech is that he was condemning riots. Martin Luther King's entire philosophy was that peaceful protest was good. MLK is a perfect example. Yep, stay peaceful for the best results. Yep. MLK was always for nonviolence. Dude, you're pontificating about half a quote from a full speech that you don't know about. I was rebutting the person that said Martin Luther King was for violence. I'm sorry, but is your base claim here that Martin Luther King's entire philosophy was that violent protests were good? Because that's just not borne out by any of his quotes or any of his speeches. But let's pull up this full speech. Okay, Dr. King elaborated on this speech even later. So whoever just said that, Dr. Speech then elaborated. He said, riots do not develop out of thin air. They are a response to unaddressed social injustices. However, he condemned both the violence of riots and the conditions that gave rise to them and said that we have to understand both. We have to understand not just the symptoms, but the root causes. King then advocated throughout his entire career for nonviolent protests. King was very well known for leading numerous nonviolent protests. The fact that people in chat are trying to misquote him and say that I'm pontificating is just insane. But I'm going to leave it at that. Let me know. Let me know what you guys think. We will continue daily live streams. We'll continue to push back against this admin. Love you all, and peace out.